topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready to take a journey? Let's connect with the healers of the world. It's that time. It's time for the Language of Healing on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Now here's your host, Emotional Wisdom Training Specialist Nicole Fortin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Language of Healing. We're here on November 19th, 2021, and I just wanted to make a quick note about this amazing full moon eclipse that we just had last night. I'm in North America. I did not see it, but you could feel the vibes of it, and people are talking about it, and it was an event that I think it's the longest one in 600 years or something. So anyway, this ties in a little bit, I believe, with what we're talking about today, which is negative self-talk and shifting your internal dialogue. Because I don't know if you've noticed that emotions are running high these days, whether they're your own or people around you. And that does have an influence and impact you. And so I just wanted to read a little thing from the Power Path. It's a school of shamanism. It's an email that I'm a part of. They offer a lot of great courses, and they always do a little full moon and new moon update. And so they're calling this moon the Shake Up Moon, as it will shake up whatever has settled at the bottom of the barrel of your emotions, patterns, belief systems, behaviors, attitudes, old wounds, regrets, and judgments. The theme of the month is pressure, and the pressure comes to a head with building tensions and potentially explosive results. And so this is also about if your life is overly complicated and you're overwhelmed, it's really time to simplify and figure out what's really important to you. And here we have a little, research that talks about we have 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative. And I've also heard that the majority of our thoughts are coming from our memories, coming from the past, and there's actually very little, a small margin of inspiration or positive thought that comes into mind to really move you forward. So an Emotional Wisdom Training Institute, we teach and talk a lot about our feelings, thoughts, and beliefs, and these are coming from our past experiences. So the events, incidences, and accidents that happen in our lives, we form feelings, thoughts, and beliefs around them. And whether they are limiting or motivating us is really a point of view, a perspective. So we can shift that. There are many practices and tools and tips and strategies that we're going to talk about today, and more to come. Our guest today is James Kawainui. He is a Native Hawaiian healer and a favorite on the Language of Healing. And he has a new book coming out, a chapter in a new book, The Ultimate Guide to Healing, Volume 5. And his chapter is on negative self-talk and shifting the internal dialogue. So please let us welcome James Kawainui. And he's hello. He's on the road in Arizona. Oh, I can't hear you. Is that just me, Roxy? All right. Sorry about that. We're just going to have a little moment here. I'm going to keep talking about negative self-talk. James is on the road here. Oh, do we have you? Yay.
I have no idea what happened, but it fixed itself.
Yeah, good. Good.
How's everything going today, Nicole?
Things are good. I'm human. I get caught up in the hustle and bustle and this negative self-talk. Yeah. But it really helps me to stay focused on what it is that I really want, and just keeping focused on like, okay, I have a choice here. I get to do all of these amazing things. And we've lost him again. But yeah, things are going good. Here's some things that I read about negative self-talk or negative thoughts that might be playing in your mind. I have definitely some of my own here. We've got James back. So some negative self-thoughts. What do you think about this, James? I'm helpless. I have no control. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I am too much. This always happens. I can't do this. I can't do that.
Yeah, those are all stories. Those are all stories that we tell ourselves. But I like the what you said at the beginning. There's something else to add to that, and scientists have proven through research that by the time we're in our mid-30s, 95% of what we do on a daily basis are automated responses. So even the negative responses that we have become automated inside of us. And so, how do we look at that, and what do we do? I mean, I know for me, I listened to myself for many years, but we have to go back, and we kind of sometimes have to, not sometimes, we have to go back and we have to go, okay, where did I learn this? Because that's really the key. I didn't learn to speak negatively about myself. I personally do not believe that we come in like that, where we come into the world and we're automatically degrading or
Yes. Okay. So we're having some problems with James here. He'll pop in again. But on that note of coming into this world with negative self-talk, no, I also believe that we are quite fresh, clean slate when we do come in to this world. I actually just started watching this Netflix series on babies, the documentary about babies, and just how brilliant their minds actually are, right? That we are sponges that are constantly receiving information from a very young age, and we're influenced that. Oh, hello.
Yep. And I apologize. I have no idea, but I'm going to go in and out, and that's just, we're going to have to deal with that today. And I apologize to everybody,
No
but for me, we went back to stories or ways that I was treated and the things that I was told. So in the book, in the Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing, I wrote the chapter, and it was about the relationship that I had with my stepfather. And basically what happened is, from the time I was about 4 or 5 years old, he continuously told me all the things that I was not. I wasn't smart. I was fat. So, and I was lazy, and he literally programmed negative self-talk into me, so that when I left home, and this is the part that really became amazing, was when.
All right. So we'll wait for James again. And so with emotional wisdom training, we also we recognize this, that we are developing, and our brains are developing, and our feelings, thoughts, and beliefs are forming at a very young age. And like James's example about his stepfather, saying, implanting these things, we pick that up as kids, as young kids. Our brains are like sponges, right?
Yeah, they are. And then you can hear me now, Nicole, right? So I'm just going to keep talking. Okay. And then what happens is, after a while, as we get older, then we just incorporate that negative self-talk into our everyday lives because we've been trained to talk or to think that way. And the only thing that we can do is basically go off the training that we received. So I was in some ways I'm ashamed to say this, but in some ways I'm grateful that I did. But I was in my 40s before I really realized the extent of what I was doing. And the reason that that changed for me is because I actually started listening to what I was saying. And I think that that's a really powerful piece because when I started listening to how I was talking about myself and how I described my world, um, I was actually appalled. And I think that other people have had that experience. And I know in
Right. Like noticing how we speak to ourselves as we would others. Like we generally are so much harder on ourselves, right?
oh my God, I am, we are in some ways our worst self-critic. And
Yeah.
and where does that come from though? That piece inside that says, that constantly does that. It's constantly looking. And people would argue about where that is and how it shows up. But for me, I think it's ego. I think it's that part of us that wants to keep us small and in control. The ego is so powerful. And once it gets, in some ways, an idea of who we are, it maintains that. And it feels like it's impossible to break out of, you know? And so we go through our life. And then
Yeah, so when we're about 4 or 5 years old, this is when our subconscious ego comes in,
we're
which
just
is
going to
what
keep playing.
yeah, okay. We're
it,
back. I'm just
yeah,
commenting on what you're saying
yeah,
previously,
yeah.
because yeah. So go on.
No, it's okay. But what I was going to say before, I went away again, was that then what happens as we go through our lives, we bring in relationships, and we bring in situations and things that happen in our lives to reinforce that mindset that literally that we've been trained to, given, and continue to follow inside of ourselves. So the relationships that we bring into our lives, unless we get very clear or we get aware, we will bring relationships in that will continue to disparage and to in some ways reinforce that feeling that we have inside of us.
So awareness is a big part of that. You have to first be aware of
Eh,
what's happening, what you're saying, and then I think the journey comes with like what else is going on around that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, awareness I think is the key. Awareness is the key, though. I think for everyone on their spiritual path, because I know every week you talk to different people, and at some point inside of the conversation, there has to be some comment or conversation about awareness. True.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like without awareness, you have nothing, And then from an emotional wisdom training standpoint, we have awareness with acceptance versus resistance, right? Creates the awakening and the
Creates the
movement forward.
awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it all
It,
starts with awareness. You have to
it,
recognize that what you're doing. This is the wise guru stance, like standing above, rising above it, and gathering
yeah.
more information.
I don't know. I have to change until I realize I have to change. I know this
Right.
sounds like a paradox in some ways, but until we have, you're right, that emotional intelligence, until we get to that place where we have this understanding, or for some people it's the aha. For me, it was a conversation that I was having with my wife, and she looked at me one day and she said, "Do you really hear how you speak to yourself?" And I looked at her, and I was dead serious when I said this. I said, "You don't understand. That's how I feel inside." So there wasn't even a place where I could see a different understanding or a different idea of what that looked like or what that felt like. And the grace that I had in my life was that I had a partner. I was in a relationship where she said, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that with you anymore. I am not going to be part of that relationship or in your relationship in that way, where I'm going to allow or in some ways support that mindset anymore. And I think that was amazing for me, because that gave me the space to look at that. And that's when I started going in and I started looking at all the places of how I was talking about myself. And some people may say, well, my internal dialogue's not that bad. And I would say, well, it's not just the internal dialogue that I have with me, right? But it's the internal dialogue, or the way that I describe the world. And so if you just took a few seconds and you went back to that and you said, okay, let me just do an exercise. And that's kind of one of the things that I thought maybe we could do today, is just to have people do an exercise. And that is just for 10 seconds or 15 seconds, or just grab a piece of paper and just kind of write down or think about the way that you describe the world. Like, and I'm just going to give an example, right? How you describe rain. Okay, rain seems very mundane. Rain has really no emotional connection, right? But either it's, it's raining, or it's raining, or it's raining again. And those are the ways that I'm describing the world. And so, is rain have anything to do with that? Is there any way that I can change the rain? No, rain is what it is. But the emotional attachment that I put to it in some way describes how I feel, or how I feel about the world. And people may not look at it that way,
Right. Yep. Those are small cues, though, to really, and it's, maybe a good start is to recognize it in other people, because you can really see it better in others, right, than yourself. But not to go into like a judgment of them, but it's like, if someone says, okay, this happened to me this week. I went to look at some mattresses, and there was like, I was checking out these mattresses, and that guy helping me was like, do you love Christmas? And I was like, well, like, not really. I mean, I enjoy Christmas for what it is, but there's also some like connections there with me, with the hustle and it's dark and it's cold and it's not my internally most joyous time. So in that moment, I learn a lot about myself, how I respond to that question. And I learn a lot about him, because do I even have to ask him if he loves Christmas? I already know he loves Christmas.
Yeah. You hear it in his voice. Just the fact that he asked you that, and the way, then the manner that he asked you that was enough, right?
Yeah.
It was confirmation. What he was looking for.
We can recognize in others, it's like, okay, that's really important to him.
Yeah. What was really cool to recognize is that you heard his enthusiasm inside of that. You heard, you felt his energy. And you and I have talked about energy before, but this is in some ways another example of that, But coming back to that idea of that self, that internal dialogue and that negative self-talk is just taking a few seconds. And so another way of doing that is tuning into your body. Because when you start tuning into your body as something is happening, right? I think that's the emotional intelligence, because the emotional intelligence is inside the physical form. So one of the things that I do when I'm working with people, and I say, okay, so what I want you to do is to think of something negative. In other words, just think about something negative. Just think about what it is, write it down on a piece of paper, and then say it out loud. Say whatever that negative statement is out loud, right? And then when you do, can you go internal and have it and have the awareness to go inside and then watch or feel or experience what happened inside your body, right? So I say the negative statement, and then there's this energy shift inside of me, and my chest gets tight, my shoulders slump. There's a I call it the ickies in my stomach. I get the ickies in my stomach, and all of these things are happening. because my body is reacting to the words that were in that statement, right? And when we start to look at it,
Yes. All right. So the negative statements that we're saying, James was just giving us a practice there about writing down a negative statement, really taking a moment and settling in, recognizing what might be your negative statement, and what do you notice about that in your body.
how does it feel?
Yeah, noticing what sensation, and this is the link, this is the gap between our mind and our body, and we also have the heart component as well. But this is getting deeper into recognizing that we are a vast system, more than just our mind, more than just our body, more than just heart.
We stay in our heads, and that's where the control ends up being. And so when we start to recognize how my body is reacting inside of it, then I can really see the effects that is having. And this is something else to maybe to think about as well, right? Even thinking that negative thought creates the shift and the energetic shift inside of you. So we say, well, I didn't say that. Where were you thinking it? And if you were thinking it, then it's literally having the same effect. It's having the same effect inside. And what happens in your body over time when it's constantly in that negative state, then the body's shutting down. It doesn't want to move. We don't see opportunities in our life because we've already decided that our life is a certain way. And what we think, we create. You and I have talked about that before. What you think, you create. So it's thinking about how I want to live my life. And in some ways, the things that I don't want to create anymore.
Yeah, it's like focusing on what's good, what's working, versus focusing on what's not working, because what you do put your attention on, you get more of.
Exactly.
That is, I don't know if it's a universal law, but it's pretty true.
I think it's a universal law. It is a universal law, right? So now take the same thing that we did. Take a few seconds, So think about something positive. Think about the sunrise or a flower. Think about a baby laughing. Think about something beautiful that happened to you. Somebody smiled at you or somebody said something. And so think about that statement. Write that statement down, right? And then say it out loud to yourself and see if you feel the shift in your body.
And then we're noticing that, and we have a practice with emotional wisdom training around state line, and it's recognizing what state of being you're in. So if you're in that negative state of being, you could give it a word or a sentence, and there's another side of it. And so when we're playing around with state line, we're recognizing that negative, because everything is polarity and duality. It's the nature of life, masculine, feminine, night, day. And so we've got negative and positive, and this is what we're life hacking today. With James Kawainui on the road in Arizona, coming in and out.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and we can look at this, and I can get really upset and go, oh my God, look at what's happening. I can't stay in here. And Nicole must think I'm flake. Everybody's like getting, they're getting upset because I can't stay in line. And my mind can do all of those things. Or every time it clicks off, I'm actually laughing. I'm going, okay, universe, what are we learning today? And what are you trying to teach me? Because I keep coming in and out. And And so where is that? And for me, when I see that, is that, can I have patience, and can I give myself, in some ways, be a little bit more gentle with myself, with what's going on, and realize in this moment that I'm actually doing the best that I can. We are doing the best that we can, and the circumstances as it is, and we go back to the moon last night, and we look, and this is a time of shaking up. This is a time of old paradigms breaking down. So, I can even look at what's happening right now, and I can get very negative inside of that. And the reality is that we don't need to,
Yeah, because
It's
the
just,
intention of today's episode and what we're talking about is around negative self-talk and shifting that
yeah,
internal dialogue. And
yep,
life, this is a moment where a lot of us are not getting what we want, right? It's like there are obstacles and there are challenges and there are things we've never really had to deal with, a lot of unknown. And so what is our resilience in those moments, right? Like, this is what it's all about. So no, I'm not worried. No, we're just gathering information, and this is real life. I love it when I'm working with somebody, and say, there's all the, like, they're telling me, I don't know, this is just example of like my house is so noisy, like I can't get a moment of like quiet rest. I feel really overwhelmed. And they get
right.
into this really peaceful moment. And then a contractor starts hammering away. It's like you're away from, you're away from your environment, but something else is going to come. So that's the test, right? It's like, how do you respond wisely versus react emotionally?
Well,
And do you go into that loop spin cycle? And we're coming into the holidays, which are all about bringing
all
up
of
old
this,
things.
yeah,
So it's just how we handle it in the moment, right?
it's the stories, because, and you're right, and certain times of the year just brings all of this out, and you and I talked about this a few months ago, where the holidays come in, and we get thrown into a spin cycle, because there's all of that's happening. And then there's something else that we actually haven't talked about yet today, and in regards to that, but it's also what the collective is feeling too, so is some of my self-talk, because I'm feeling the energy of the collective of the people that are around me, and so that's one of those places where we just start looking at that, and we go, okay, let me pull all of this apart, instead of reacting automatically, instead of thinking that it's me, or if it's not even thinking that it's me, instead of just being that, whatever that is. Can I have, again, we're going back to that word, that level of awareness, to be able to pull this apart and go, wow, wait a minute, I'm feeling negative in this moment. I can hear that negative thought going through my head. Is that my negative thought? Wow, no, I actually don't feel that way. Although, I mean, I'm not thinking that way, although I'm feeling that way in this moment. And then looking at that and going, okay, what do I need to do? Well, let's shift this. How can I shift this in this moment so that I can actually bring peace back into my body, right? And if we want to jump sideways to the holidays, then in the holidays there's this rush, because there's this anticipation and of the things, but then there's also, I think one of the things that we struggle with is the expectation of that. Will I live up to somebody else's expectation? Will I get the perfect gift? Will I do the right things and be there for my family? Oh my God, it's endless. All of those things are endless. And so can I just look at that in every moment? And as long as I know that I'm doing the best that I can, and yeah, am I going to stumble? I stumble all the time. Yet, when I stumble, I know I can stand up and I can start over again. It's not cut and dry. This is not permanent. We can change. You can change.
Right. Yes, I mean, like, the most powerful moment is the present, right? Because we have the collective information from looking back to where we've been, and we can look forward based on that and really get connected. Um, Yeah, there's just so many, like, life is just a real playing ground, it's like, it's just practice. Every day's practice, every moment, and if you mess up this one, I'm sure it's going to come back for you to handle again. Yeah. And, most people, like, yeah, I think that's, sorry to
go ahead.
cut you off there, but with picking up on the collective energy, because if we are around someone who's like very negative and we're not recognizing it, we can be brought into that. Like, one person is entraining the other. So, and negative energy, for whatever reason, has this pull, this like insatiable pull that is a real force to stand up, and meet.
Yeah. It because there's a pattern that's inside of it, and we're talking about the internal dialogue. We're talking about the forces and the collective outside of us. That there's a pattern. There's patterns of.
Okay. We'll wait again here. So I'm not sure what James is talking about. The collective. Here we go. We have him back. Your point was really good. You were talking. I couldn't finish that for you.
That's okay. We have the pattern, and we're starting to look at it, but the pattern is running inside of the collective as well. Because think about the last 2 years, and think about everything that we've been through, and think about the pressures. And we're not even going to get into the conversation about vaccinated or non-vaccinated, but the pressure around all of that, the pressure to conform, the pressure of what do we do now, the pressure of there's even this pressure of people not realizing or understanding how to socialize now, because they've been isolated for so long. And so a lot of people are having social anxiety now. So those are all in some ways collective energies. Where are we going to go? What's the world going to come to? Is this really a supply chain issue, or is this just some system that's broken? All of that. I mean, we can get into lots of different discussions that is not the place. This is not the place for that. But the point is, those energies are driving some of our behavior as well. And if there's that.
Yeah. So just recognizing that we have our internal environment and our internal terrain, and we govern our body, mind, heart. That's a package, but it's also interacting with outside external environment. And
like
and so we're
going to get through this.
Yeah, of course, we're doing it. Yes.
We're again, this is one of those places where we can watch ourselves overreact. We can watch ourselves react, and there's really no need to. We stay in the present. I realize that this is going to happen. In some ways, it may not be anything that I can control in this moment. I mean, you cannot control signal. I mean, I could have been at home.
Yeah, it's true. We just have to stay focused on our intention and recognizing what's getting our attention. But the more we stay focused on that intention, we will get more of what we want. And even though like the negative things come in and out, like James's service, we still carry on anyway, because we have this direct focus that we're talking about having more acceptance in life. I think that's really what it comes to, is just accepting the present and choosing wisely from there, being resourceful, because you're doing the best that we can. All of us are doing, whole, creative, perfect, resourceful, doing the best we can with what we have.
And can I be gentle with myself as I'm doing that? And can I be gentle and have a little bit of compassion when I can look at that in that way and see that what's happening is that everybody is where they are. So do I need to judge that person because they may not think or see or feel or understand where I am? No. That level of acceptance, because as I do that, then in some ways, I let go of some of that negativity. I let go of maybe some.
Yes, well, and another point to this negative beliefs or negative thoughts has to do with our guards and our gatekeepers. This is a term that we use in emotional wisdom training. But our guards and our gatekeepers, they actually are there in place to protect us and keep us safe. And at one point in time, those structures have supported us. But
And
you know,
sometimes all we have to do is take a breath when everything happens like this and it feels like it's going out of control, which is what I did when I got cut off the last time. I just kind of went, okay, let me take a breath. Let me just drop back inside of myself. Let me not let my mind, because I can see where my mind wants to take me right now. And I'm not going to let my mind take me into that place. So I'm just going to breathe back into my body. I'm going to breathe back into this present state. And I'm just going to go, okay, what do I have influence on? What can I work on? Can I do in this moment that would be the most helpful? And I think that's one of the pieces that we find challenging sometimes when we're in this situation, is stepping back into that open-hearted space, if you want to call it that way, and go, okay, in this moment, how can I be most effective? In this moment, how can I give myself permission to accept myself and what's going on, accept people around me, and not have to step into negative responses or reactions. Taking that breath sometimes is, even though it sounds really simple, can be very powerful, because what it's doing is it's interrupting my thoughts. It's interrupting the process. It's interrupting the place where my mind wants to take me over and over and over again. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not going there. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to go into that negative space. In this moment, I'm going to choose not to. And sometimes I may have to do that to myself 8 or 10 or 20 times a day. Yet I'm catching it as it's happening. And even though it might feel a little bit tedious in the beginning, and we haven't talked about this yet, what I'm doing is I'm breaking down a very old, very regimented pattern, and I'm in the process of creating the new pattern. The new pattern is of looking at life in a different way, of being able to create positive responses and to see, instead of just the negative, the different layers inside of my life.
mm-hmm. So really focusing on what is working
Instead of what
versus
isn't. Yeah.
what isn't. Yeah.
What isn't working is a survival response. What isn't working is, in some ways, the ego looking for things to make wrong. And so can I step back long enough to say, okay, wait a minute, I can do that, but how beneficial is it to me, right? I used to say this, and I had relationships in the past where I would look at that and I would get really angry at my partner, and I would go, I can do 10 things and I can do 9 things perfect, and you're going to find the one thing that I didn't do. And were they actually doing that? No, I was doing that to myself, because there was this place, and we haven't even talked about this today, this place of having to be perfect that drives a lot of this negative response and this negative internal dialogue. And so taking away that idea that the vision of perfect James, I call him Perfect James. Perfect James does everything correctly. He has the right, he smiles right. He has, he's not fat, because sometimes, I had this mindset inside of my head for a long time that I was overweight. He'll always know what to say. He'll say the right things. Everybody will love Perfect James. And I'm holding up this comparison of Perfect James and me, and looking at seeing that I don't measure up. And I go right into that negative spin, right there. It just happens. It's automatic. I'm comparing myself to something that doesn't exist. I'm comparing myself to Perfect James.
In a way, it's like beneficial to have a perfect version of you, or just like that, something to aspire to, because why wouldn't you want to always be exuding this like natural, easy, clear, concise, like I'm the same way. I mean,
and you're right, because then we're looking at, but I'm not doing that in a way that if I think that I'm not attaining perfect James, that means that I'm a failure,
right.
or I'm wrong. And that's where most of us go. We go to that place and it says, well, I didn't get there, I must not be any good. And then we spiral, and then there's a spiral, and it goes like this, and it goes down. And then I used to call it making piles, because if one thing comes in, then I'll find another thing to come in, and then I'll go looking for all these other things to make this big pile of all this negative stuff that's happening. And once I get to that place, and once we get to that place, we're done. There's not a lot of to be able to shift that. And so,
right, because we do gather the evidence to support our beliefs, no matter what our belief is, if it's the positive or the negative, or the the pros, the cons. We're gathering the evidence to support our belief. And when we can step back and see that there are more than one belief, because also bringing in our subconscious ego, or our ego mind, that is the id, right? The identity. It is what we see that separates us and gives us our own special, unique signature, but sometimes that separation can create a real tension. And
sometimes our identities are created for us, and that's what happens in some cases, because we grow up listening and become the programming of our environment around us, right? There is that place of that programming, and we accept that, and we draw that in, and it becomes our identity as well. And so it's this place of watching all of that. It's really I think this whole process is fascinating, because I get to see all the different pieces of myself, and do my best not to see the different pieces, but without judgment, without making these parts right or wrong, but being able to recognize that enough so that I can go, wow, do I really want to do that to myself anymore? Do I really want to feel that way? Because I know how I feel when I create those states, and I know how I feel when I create the states of happiness and joy, or there's satisfaction or contentment, or this, all of those pieces, right? So in every moment, and I think this may be one of the keys to this, is in every moment I have a choice of the state that I am in. And
I love that. This is a perfect example. Yes, the choice, coming in and out of service. But this is like the reality of life. And there you go. What was your choice, James?
well, the choice of the state that I'm in, the choice to be able to see, for me, one of the choices is to be able to see the beauty in it. And for me, when I look at other people, so I'll tell you a real quick story. I realized that there was a little bit more work with this that needed to be done, right? So I was driving in traffic. Traffic was really bad this morning on the way down here. I was driving in traffic, and there was a truck in front of me, and in the window of the truck in the back, it said Trump 2020. And we're not going to get into a yes or no or anything else like that. And for just a split second, I felt the trigger, and I kind of laughed at myself.
Yeah, so James is just sharing an example of some triggers that we'll see, or things that will come into our awareness that will test our resiliency. In that moment, you were triggered by that sign.
I didn't drop into the judgment and being angry, or then thinking about all the things that, that have happened over the last 5 years, or letting any of that happen. I just kind of looked at that and I laughed and I said, okay, James, there's a little bit more work to do there. and I said, okay, can I just let that go? Can I come get to this place where I can just see it and go, oh yeah, this is who he is. And that's the level of acceptance, because it goes, I need to agree with him? No. Does he need to agree with me? No. Can we exist, right? This is when we talk about coexist. Can we exist? And can I accept that not everybody's going to think the same way I do? And I think there's this polarization that's happening in our society right now, where we have to convince everybody of my point of view, and you have to believe me, and you have to actually agree with my point of view. And I think that's causing a lot of dissension right now. And it doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's like, I see the different color of the sky, and you see the sky as a different color of blue, and we're going to argue because you want me to see the color of blue that you see. And there's no way that that's going to happen. Yet, in some ways, that's how. There's two words that come up when I think about that: petty and ridiculous everything is. Because there's no space inside of that for acceptance of each other. For me, it's seeing the soul of that person.
Mm-hmm. And it's the acceptance of the acceptance and the realization that there are many points of view and many ways to reach a similar, or not even similar task, but you can hold space for others to have a perspective and a point of view, and recognizing that we are gathering information to support our beliefs all the time. And so if we're looking at a belief that we have about ourselves is like, I never say the right thing, that's that belief, that folder is going to get pretty thick of all of the events that you never said the right thing. And then
Well,
we pay a small portion amount to like the opposite of that, and building what we really want more of is.
Well, that's funny, because what you're talking about now is you're talking about how the brain works, because what we're talking about is the synaptic connection that we create. And every time we think those thoughts, then what we do is we build that synaptic connection so that it becomes stronger and stronger, so that eventually that's the only thought that we have, because that's the way that we've taught our brains to think. And so when we start breaking out of that, we actually start making, from the science point of view, we start making new synaptic connections, and realizing that that may not be the only road to get to the other side, or that may not be the only opinion that we have. Although my brain, because of that patterning, will have this tendency to go back to that over and over and over again, until I become aware and say, I'm going to do this a different way. But going back to the person, can I see the soul and not the personality, right? We start talking about that. And does that have to do with negative internal dialogue? In some ways, but if I can see the soul and understand the soul, because all our, all souls, all of us at the soul level is love, acceptance. And we teach ourselves to be other than that. And so I don't see the personality or the identity of that person is. If I do, it will put me into judgment. And can I step back a little bit farther, and can I see them as the soul self? And I think that's, you were talking about acceptance at the beginning of the show. That's a place of acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, accepting of the self as well, when we're talking about negative self-talk, and treating ourselves with a bit more gentle and compassionate nature, and what difference that really could make for us if we were a little bit more open-minded to us learning and growing amongst difficult and challenging times.
The same thing, right? Because if I can accept that person and I can see the soul of who they are, then can I see the soul of who I am? Can I step beyond my personality and those pieces that I hold inside, and see the soul that I am, the soul that knows love, the soul that knows acceptance or understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
That holds light. and it's, I think that's what we all came here to do, is to understand that in a more powerful way. And everything that happens outside of it, even our in negative internal dialogue, is all a distraction from stepping back into that. And so we could look at our internal dialogue, that negative dialogue, as a distraction from knowing ourselves as love, knowing ourselves as this powerful, beautiful being.
Wonderful, James. We'll have to end there for today. And so thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. You can reach more, you can reach James and more information at www.jameskawainui.com. And you can find him at jameskawainui@gmail.com. Email or website, reach out. We'll check out your new book, the chapter in the new book, Ultimate Guide to Healing, Volume 5. And that's soon.
Yeah, the book comes out the 17th of December. So
okay.
We're about to get the advanced reader copy, and I'm just throw that out there. If people want to read the book before everybody else is, reach out to me. There's a way to getting on the list that you get the black and white version, basically, that before it gets printed. And you can help us by reading and reviewing the book and then sharing your reviews with other people. And it helps to bring light to what we're doing. You know, the Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing, Volume 5, obviously there were 4 other volumes before that. I was in Volume 4. And there's some amazing practitioners, and there's some amazing processes, and the books were created to give people tools, everyday tools, to be able to do self-inquiry, to live your life, to become aware of different aspects of who you are. And so those books have been very powerful for people, and if it feels right to you, we would love to have you be a part of that advanced reader, or be just to read the book when it comes out. So thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll add that link in our show notes below, and reach out. And thank you so much, James. I hope you have a wonderful, happy, and safe travels. And
thank you. And I apologize to everybody.
Yeah, no.
And I apologize to everybody for just the confusion and the everything that happened today. So sorry about that.
No problem. Everyone listening, and James and I, what will you take with you from this conversation that will support you for the rest of your life? See you next week.
Wow, what a show today, and the journey does not stop here. Come travel the world with Nicole every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, as together we become more fluent in the language of healing on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. See you next week.